Hi guys, welcome to Palace to the Core. My name is Stephen Dawes. Thank you for joining me and thank you for continuing to support the channel. Right, so this is the end of year review where I just talk about what's happened over the season and my thoughts on various things that have taken place along the way. But before that, a couple of little bits of news have come in. First of all, apparently Crystal Palace are going to have talks with UEFA over this issue with John Textor's ownership or part ownership of Crystal Palace and Lyon. It's apparently they're billing it as crunch talks, but I don't think it's going to be something like that. I think it's just them trying to work out how best to proceed. I don't think there's going to be a major issue there. I think that we will be able to play in Europe. I think it's just they're trying to figure out how much influence John Textor has over Crystal Palace, which I don't think is a huge amount given his hostile relationship with Steve Parish. But I will keep you updated on that as much as I can, so don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with that. Also, there have been rumours that Oliver Glasner is not signing his new contract until he gets assurances from the board with regards to transfers. Now, of course, he said he's going to be there next season because his contract is until next summer. But in terms of extending that deal, he wants to make sure first that this summer we get in the players that we need, and also we get them in good time because, as you know, last season we brought in I think 3 or 4 players right on deadline day. And Oliver Glasner was very open about the fact that he didn't feel that was the best thing to do. So hopefully that means that Oliver Parish will look at that and say, well, okay, let's get some players in quick and early so that we can help Oliver Glasner with his pre-season, and that will then hopefully make him more adaptable and more able to sign a longer contract. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Now, of course, it's time for the end of season review, and I'm just going to put some thoughts out there as to how I think the season went. You can, of course, let me know down in the comment section what you thought as well. Give me your thoughts on how you felt the season panned out. It certainly wasn't the way I expected it to go, and if you'd have told me at the beginning of the season what would have happened, I would probably have not believed you. Obviously, losing Elise and Anderson was a big blow for us, although thankfully we managed to hold on to Gahey at the end of last season. But it was a big blow, although I expected Elise to go. I didn't expect Anderson to go. However, I think Maxence Lacroix has come in and done a very good job. I think he's calm, he's collected, he does a great job. He's done some amazing last-ditch tackles to keep us in games and things like that. So I think he's actually slotted in really well. We also, of course, had Trevor Chalobah, who was then recalled to Chelsea later on in the season. But I think that's actually helped Chris Richards come in and become a stable force at the back. I think that he has now cemented himself as one of those back three, and I think that's a good thing because certainly he is a good defender, and he's shown how good he has been at the back there with Lacroix and Gahey. Obviously, there is still doubts over whether Gahey will stay at the end of this season or not. It's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be a tough one to judge, but I think if a big club comes along, I think he might well decide to go, even though we have got European football next season. In terms of the season itself, obviously it didn't start off very well. We had a really bad start, not picking up very many points at all, and to be fair, along with a couple of other people, I wasn't entirely sure whether Glasner would survive. Now, that's not necessarily because I felt he was a bad manager, but I just wondered whether Parish would have enough faith in him to keep hold of him and not to press the button too soon. But he didn't, and we managed to pick up some good points later on and actually finish up in a decent position considering where we started off. Now, of course, Oliver Glasner gave his reasons for why he felt we had a difficult start. I mean, and I think you can understand it really if you consider the number of players we had on international duty. Jean-Philippe Mateta, of course, was at the Olympics and he won gold, so he was playing up until almost the last parts of the Olympic campaign. He then had a little bit of a break, but then he came back for pre-season, so we didn't have a huge amount of time to rest. So I can understand why him and a lot of other players were in that situation. So yeah, I can understand his reasons behind it, and also, as he said, because of the late transfers, They didn't have a huge amount of pre-season. Some hadn't had a pre-season at all, so they then had to get themselves fit and get themselves into the way that the team play and how Glasgow wants the team to be set up. So I can imagine and understand why we had so many problems early on in the season, but I'm glad that we managed to turn things around and get into a bit more of a rhythm and start picking up some points. Of course, along the way we started our FA Cup journey, and there are some people who said that we had a little bit of luck along the way. You know, big teams went out early and things like that, but I think that with any competition you get a little bit of luck along the way. And I think that we did get a little bit of luck here and there, especially in the final with the certain things that went on. But I think that every club who wins a competition gets a little bit of luck along the way. That's just how it happens. You know, we lose. You know, we get good and bad happen to us along the season, and I do firmly believe that it equals itself out as the season goes on. So I think that we did a good job. I think that you know, being able to be competitive in the league as well as the FA Cup, I felt showed a huge amount of resilience, considering we do have more strength in depth than we've had before, but we still haven't got a huge amount. So, you know, and also, you know, we've had injuries to Chadiwi, and Doucouré, which has kind of left us a little bit short. But I'm pleased at how we've managed to keep the team consistent for most of the time, and he's been adamant that he wants to put out a strong team for every competition, including the FA Cup. And I think that did help us along the way to fending off some of those teams and to pushing ourselves forward, and eventually, of course, getting to the final, which we managed to win. Highlight of the year, highlight of my time as a Palace supporter as well, to be fair with you. And I'm sure there are a lot of Palace fans out there who would say that winning the FA Cup is the highlight of their time as a Palace fan, and I completely agree with you. You know, I think what we've seen this season is players again. Oliver Glasner getting the best out of players such as, Jean-Philippe Mateta, Will Hughes, Tariq Mitchell has even upped his game a little bit. He's a lot better than he was before. Not quite on the same level as Daniel Munoz, but I think Daniel Munoz is a unique type of player that is able to get forward almost at will. You know, he has so much energy, so much determination, not only up front but also to track back at the end. So, it was always going to be difficult to find someone to match him on the other side. I think Tariq Mitchell does do a good job. Very good one-on-one defender, I think, personally. And I think Ben Chilwell came in during the January transfer window. I think there's a little bit of a backup, and I think he's a bit more like Daniel Munoz in terms of he likes to get forward. He's good at crossing the ball in and things like that. He's got a good foot on him for scoring goals and things like that. But obviously I think he's going to go back to Chelsea at the end of the season. I don't think he's going to stay, because I think one of the reasons I think is because I think he wanted more minutes, and secondly I think also I don't think we're going to be able to afford his wages unless he takes a pay cut. So I think he's going to go back, which is a shame, because I think he was a good player for us. But of course we're going to have to look at who we're going to bring in place of him. In terms of who I think is going to leave, I'm a bit in two minds about Eze. I'm not entirely sure he's going to go. I think a lot of it depends on who bids for him and who comes in for him. But I think that he may well still be here at the end of the season, at the end of the summer, as well as Marc Guéhi. I think that they could well both still be here at the end of the summer. I think a lot of that is going to be on Oliver Glasner, and the fact that we've got European football next season. I think those two things are going to be key, I think, to us staying in keeping those two players. In terms of who goes, I think it's going to be tough. Adam Wharton might be one of those players who moves on. He hasn't played a huge amount of football this season because of injuries and other things, but he is a very good player, and I know that there are a few teams after him, so there is a potential there that someone might snap him up. But I don't see anyone else potentially wanting to go. I don't think that any of the other players are necessarily desperate to move on. I think Eze and Guéhi are our two main worries, I think, in terms of people leaving the club. I don't think anyone else will necessarily want to go, and certainly I think a lot of them are going to want to stay and play European football under Oliver Glasner, especially with his track record in the competition. So we've got some positives there. We certainly have got some positives. In terms of who we're going in for, no obvious names have been standing out for me at the moment, and certainly no one has been banded around as being a potential signing for us. Lots of rumours, as you imagine, this time of year. But overall, I think it's been a really good year for us. In terms of picking a player of the season, I mean, I would tend to agree with who the players picked, and that was Daniel Munoz. I think overall he was absolutely immense for us. I really do think so. I mean, you can go for your Eze's, you can go for Wharton, you can go for Will Hughes, who I think also played an important part in our season. You can go for Mateta. You can go for Ismail Yassar, who I think really came forward, especially at the end of the season, banging in the goals. But I think for me, it's going to be Daniel Munoz. But let me know down in the comment section who you think your player of the season is for this last season. Who do you think deserves a mention and an award, should we say, if that was the case? It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen over the summer. And of course, I'm going to keep you up to date with everything that's going to happen. So don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with all that sort of thing. And really, that is about it, as much as I want to say on the subject. Let me know down in the comment section what was the outstanding part for your season. I know the FA Cup is going to be there right front and centre, but anything else that you think stood out for you in terms of this season as a positive. And I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. Please do subscribe, and until the next time, I'll see you later.